Okay, this is an integer review for those of you who are going to do the retest. This is your practice questions. The first two questions are true and false, and it says true or false. 22 take away -3 is greater than 22 times -3. So the first thing we have to do is realize that this says is greater than. And I know that it says is greater than because it's eating what I just said. So if I say 22 take away -3, and that symbol is eating what I said, I must say is greater than. That's kind of a shortcut way to kind of read it properly. So I'm going to simplify this left. 22 take away -3. I could think about 22 positives take away 3 negatives. Or if I have $22 and my grandmother takes away from me $3 worth of debt. If I have 22 and my grandmother takes away $3 worth of debt, I will be $25 richer. But the simpler way to do it is keep your first integer the same. Keep 22 as 22. Change the subtraction to addition and use the opposite. In the case of this one, -3 becomes +3. And that will get you the same answer, and it's called keep flip change. So if you, instead of subtracting, if you keep flip change, you'll get the same answer without having to overheat your brain trying to figure out what the answer is. Because 22 plus 3 is +25, is greater than, in this case, 22 times 3 is 66. This is a positive, this is a negative, which means that answer is negative. Is 25 greater than -66? Yes, it is. So the answer is true. Question 2 says this whole little expression here is equal to the other side. So let's simplify this. This says, right here, this really says -24 take away -2. And then once you get that answer, divide it by -2. So these two things here, this up here and this in the red, are both the same thing. I'm going to keep it like the red. So what is -24 take away -2? Well, that's the same thing. It's a subtraction. So we're going to keep this first integer the same. We're going to change to addition, and we're going to use the opposite of the second. So instead of doing 24 negatives take away 2 negatives, which is actually quite easy. Let's go back and look at that. 24 negatives take away 2 negatives. Well, that's easy. That's 22 negatives. But instead of doing that, if I keep flip and change, 24 negatives plus 2 positives is still 22 negatives. So this whole part here, this part up here, works out to be -22 divided by -2 divided by -2 is +11, because 22 divided by 2 is 11. Same signs, our rule for integers of division and multiplication. If the signs are the same, your answer will be positive. So on this whole side here, when I work it all out, I get this whole side here. This here is worth +11, is equal to, well, 8 take away -3, flip that sign to addition and use the opposite. 8 plus 3 is 11. So 11 is equal to 11, so your answer for the second question is true. Question 3 is a subtraction question. So instead of doing subtraction, keep 10 as 10, change subtraction to the opposite, which is addition, and use the opposite of the second one, which is +5. 10 plus 5 is 15. Question 4, 10 times 5 is 50. This is a positive. It's not written, but it is. This is a negative, so they're opposite signs, and different signs will always give you a negative product, -50. Question 5 is addition. If I have 10 positives, and I'm going to make this a positive. That's a positive. That's a positive. These are all positives. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 positive combined with 5 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equals +5, because a positive and a negative make a zero pair. So all of those effectively cancel each other out, and I'm left with +5. Another way for me to think about that, if I have $10 and I combine that with $5 worth of debt, I'm no longer worth $10. I'm only worth $5 now, because I've also taken on, or I've added to my value, $5 worth of debt. Question 6 says 10 divided by -5. So +10 divided by -5. Contextually, there's no real context for taking 10 and dividing it by -5. However, the rule says just divide 10 by 5, and that gives you 2. This is a positive, this is a negative, which means they're opposite signs, which means you have a negative quotient, and a quotient is simply the answer to a division. Question 7. This is interesting, because this says 12 take away 6. Another way to think of this is -12 take away, don't forget, this is a positive 6. Because this is a subtraction sign, I'm going to put it down there, but that 6 is a positive 6. So this here and this here are the same thing. Sometimes for those people who find it difficult to subtract integers that don't have symbols attached to them, it's easier to rewrite it like this and start from there. It's easier. Because now I'm going to keep negative 12. I'm going to change the subtraction to addition. And instead of using a positive 6, I'm going to use, oh, hang on a second. I'm going to use, oh, that's not working. Oh, that didn't work at all. Let's undo that. I'm going to use a negative 6. Okay? So negative 12 plus negative 6, if I put those together, I get negative 18. Don't forget, when you're adding negatives and negatives, sometimes people confuse it with the multiplication rule. But if I think of 12 negatives, each of these is a negative. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 negatives combined with 6 more negatives. That's 7 negatives, I can't count. The answer is there are 18 negatives in total. There are no zero pairs here because remember, in the last question, the positives and the negatives right over here. Remember, these created zero pairs because they were positives and negatives? Well, in this question right here, there are no zero pairs, so 12 negatives plus 6 negatives is simply 18 negatives. Question 8 says negative 12, and right here we have a bracket and then a positive 6. If there is a number, in this case 6, and let's say 3, if there are two numbers together separated by a bracket and there's no symbol in between it, we can always assume that the missing symbol is multiplication. So in effect, what this is really saying is negative 12 multiplied by positive 6. These are the same questions. So 12 times 6, well 10 times 6 is 60, 2 times 6 is 12, so 12 times 6 is 72. We are multiplying, and they have different signs, which means our product will be negative. Question 9, we have division. Negative 12 divided by a positive 6, so 12 divided by 6 is 2. A negative divided by, and again, it's not written, but we know it's positive. Opposite signs will give you a negative answer. Question 10, negative 12 plus 2. Sometimes it might be easier for people who struggle with this to rewrite it as negative 12 plus. That's a plus sign, which means this 2 is positive, so I'm just going to rewrite it as positive 2. If I have 12 negatives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 2 positives, so 12 negatives and 2 positives, these will create zero pairs, and I'll be left with negative 10. Or if I owe $12, but I get $2 for my birthday, in effect, I can pay off my debt, and now I only owe $10. So the answer is negative 10 for the product of negative 12 and 2, or the sum, excuse me, of those two. Now, for question 11 to 18, we have BEDMAS questions. So in this one, we have two operations. We have addition, and we have multiplication. This is actually taken from a grade 3 outcome. This is grade 6 outcome, excuse me, not grade 8 or grade 7. This is grade 6 outcome. So 2 plus, instead of saying 3 times 5, using BEDMAS, we know that's 15. So instead of saying 2 plus 3 times 5, I can say 2 plus 15, it's the same thing. And 2 plus 15 is 17. Question 12, I have an addition and I have a multiplication. I'm going to do my multiplication first. So the product of 3 and negative 2 is negative 6. I'm going to keep that in brackets because I want to separate my addition from my negative symbol. Negative 6 plus negative 6 is negative 12. Now the next question, I have two operations again. I have multiplication and I have subtraction. I'm going to do my multiplication first. Negative 2 times negative 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Same signs. Because I'm multiplying, the same sign rule means I have a positive product. Take away negative 4. Keep the first integer. Change subtraction to the opposite, which is addition, and change the second integer to its opposite. So 6 plus 4 will get me the same answer. I'll have 10. Question 14. I have three operations. I have multiplication, I have addition, and I have multiplication. I'll do my multiplication first. 40 times 2 is 80. Because I'm multiplying, the opposite signs will leave a negative product. I now have two operations left. The product of 30 and negative 2 is negative 60. Notice how I separate it with brackets. And then finally, the sum of 80 negatives and 60 negatives is 140 negatives. Now, most people get confused because they think, well, I have negatives here and I have negatives here, and that should be like a positive answer. No. When you're adding them, the product rule doesn't hold true. So it's just for addition, you have to gather all your negatives and all your negatives. I owe $80 and I owe $60. Altogether, I owe $140. Question 15, there are three operations here. There's a multiplication in between there. There's a subtraction and there's a multiplication. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. So I'm not going to do my subtraction. I'm going to do my product next. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. So 10 negatives take away 6. So if I owe $10 and somebody takes away from me $6 more, I would owe 16. Or you can keep the first integer as negative 10, change it to addition, and use the opposite of the second. 10 negatives plus 6 negatives is 16 negatives. Question 16. I have three operations, subtraction, addition, and multiplication. I'm going to do my multiplication first, which means I'm going to focus on it right here. 3 negatives times 2 negatives is positive 6. I now have only subtraction and addition left, so BEDMAS says do addition and subtraction in the order they appear from left to right. Now, some people think because there is A comes before S, you should do your addition first, but that's not true. This is all one step, this is one step, and this is one step. When you get, if there's no division multiplication left and you're down to addition subtraction, the O that used to be here in grade 6 is to remind you of the order from left to right. Which means when you get to this step, just do any addition subtraction as you read it from left to right. So the first one I see is a subtraction. So negative 5 take away positive 4 is negative 1. And negative 1 plus positive 6 is positive 5. Next question. This question could have been written as negative 16. I'm going to put it in square brackets. Take away negative 12, end square brackets. And once you get the answer to that, divide it by negative 2. All right, same question. Both the black and the red are the exact same question. One just looks differently. So when I do this one up here, I'm going to keep my negative 16, change it to addition, use the opposite. 16 negatives and 12 positive will give me negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 2. We use our sign rules. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Same signs with division, gives you a positive answer. Question 18. We have three operations. We have 1, 2, 3. I'll do my multiplication first. So 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 3 is positive 12. Keep your first integer, change it to addition, use the opposite. Your answer is positive 22. Now question 19 is your story problem. Your first story problem question says a plane starts at an altitude of 3,000 meters above ground. It ascends, which means goes up, at a rate of 10 meters per second. So because it's going up, we're going to think of that as being a positive 10 meters per second for 30 seconds. Then descends, which means goes down at a rate of minus 20 meters per second for 20 seconds. So the first part for ascending, it's going to be 30 seconds of going up 10 meters each. So my first, the first part of my sentence is going to be 30 times positive 10. The second part of my expression will be combining that with or adding it to 20 seconds of going down 20 meters each of those seconds. And that expression, 30 times 10 plus 20 times negative 20, is the expression I'm looking for that represents a change in altitude. Because essentially this first part means in that first 30 seconds it went up 300 meters, and in the next 20 seconds it went down 400 meters. So overall, during that 50 seconds, it would have actually totally went down 100 meters from its starting place. Now, if it started at 3,000 meters, and over the course of those 50 seconds, it went up 300 meters and down 400 meters, that means if I subtract 100 meters from the original height, the plane is now at 2,900 meters above ground. And the last question, it says the temperature over 4 days were these 4 temperatures. What was the mean, bracket, average temperature? And it says average again, just in case you didn't read it the first time. That's a misprint. Okay, so to get the average, you have to add the 4 temperatures up first. So, -2 plus -10 is -12. -12 plus -8 is -20. And -20 plus +4 is -16 degrees Celsius. So the sum of those temperatures is -16. You divide it by the number of temperatures. There was 1, 2, 3, 4 temperatures in total, so divide it by 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Opposite signs means a negative answer. So therefore, the average temperature of those 4 days was -4 degrees Celsius.